Welcome to the Uncanny Lens, where we are exploring self-concept reflections in pop culture and media. I'm your co-host, Jinx.
And I'm Minx.
And today we want to talk about something a little different. Usually we start off this podcast where we talk a little bit about what's new on our playlist or what's new in our self-concept. And what I would like to do is find a way for us to sort of combine those two things. And I thought that might look like what's going on with your media mindset this week. So what do you think about that, Minx?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about just yet, but let's figure it out together. Why don't you start?
Yeah, so I guess the way I kind of see this is that maybe what we're watching each week may be influencing other things that are going on in our life. So maybe just where is my media mindset right now? And
I see.
The reason that I wanted to explore this was because I noticed that, okay, so something that we're seeing right now is we're not getting a lot of new TV shows. Things are starting to trickle, right? We're starting to see the effects of the writer's strike and the actor's strike. And so there aren't a lot of new shows that are starting right now, which is typically the time of year that we would start seeing premieres for pilots and some of our network like CBS, ABC, NBC types of shows returning to the air, right?
Yeah.
That's not really happening right now. However, I've been watching a lot of cooking shows because those do seem to still be having their episodes coming in. They typically have longer seasons, things like MasterChef, right? They have a longer season. So there was more episodes ready for them to like deliver to us than a show that has 10, episodes per season.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've been in this space with these cooking shows and spending more time with it, I've noticed how it's affecting my mindset, and that I really am starting to appreciate seeing how people treat each other in these shows and how different it is when these shows first started. There used to be this very like cutthroat, we're competing, blah, blah, blah. Where now when I watch these shows, there seems to be this camaraderie. People want to cheer for each other. They do still understand that they're in a competition, but they're not trying to be like mean and
like competitive. That competitive spirit is like,
but like a toxic competitive spirit, right? Because like we talked a little bit about how we get competitive with gaming. This is a little different, like the early shows of these types of things. But anyway, that being said, what I've also noticed, it's influencing the type of music that I want to listen to while I'm cooking, because I want to feel like I'm like in a French kitchen or an Italian kitchen or something. And so I'm creating these really lovely sensory experiences for myself while I'm cooking. And additionally, I have this teeny tiny little herb garden. And what I've really been enjoying is going out and pulling my fresh herbs into my cooking. All of that is to say that I've really been enjoying how watching this overabundance of cooking shows has been affecting my mindset and the other types of media that I want to expose myself to, and how I want to be like creating these little cooking environments for myself to be pleasant and delightful. And it's weird because I wouldn't have thought that I would get that from watching these shows. So it's kind of a new development for me. And yeah, I'm excited to see how that's going to spill over into other areas of my life.
Awesome.
So what about you?
Yeah, well, I actually have not watched much TV or movies this week. I have been listening to a few books on tape. And Anthony Horowitz is one of the authors that I just really love his storytelling. And I just finished a novel called A Line to Kill. And then he's got these series, right? The Twist of the Knife is the other one that I just finished of his. And it's about, it's murder mystery. Big surprise there. And it's about this detective who is working with the author. So Anthony is actually the main character of this book, but it's fiction, but it's as if it was actually happening to him, right? Yeah, it's really fascinating. Anyway, I'm trying to think about what this has to do with my mindset this week.
What draws you to murder mystery? Like, what drew you to this book? What is there something going on in your life that you feel you need this comfort? Like, I guess that's sort of what I mean by media mindset. Like, where's the media you're choosing playing into like your mindset, or where is your mindset playing into the media you're choosing?
These stories aren't very scary, right? There's not a point where I'm like terrified as to what's going to happen next, so they don't keep me up. I can listen to it while I'm doing other things, but it does keep me intrigued because you want to know what actually happened and you want to know if you're right with your predictions, right? So it's keeping you on edge without being something that gets your heartbeat going, like I usually listen to these when I'm taking care of my daughter, like putting her down for a nap, and I want like a relaxed environment so it doesn't feel super stressful on my body, but it's still intriguing. Do you know what I mean? So my nervous system doesn't get like activated. I feel like with like other types of stories, they can really activate your nervous system and you can be really like on edge and terrified as to what's going to happen next to these characters that you love. And in these stories, it doesn't activate my nervous system in the same way that like a thriller would. You know what I mean?
So I feel like what I'm hearing is that it allows you to kind of be low effort because you can still be getting the stimulation for your mind while you're doing things that are typically not maybe necessarily stimulating to your mind in the way that you like your mind to be stimulated, right? Like doing dishes or, house care, things like that. And by being able to engage in these low effort types of media that also aren't activating to your nervous system, you're able to get that mental stimulation without needing to get that physical, like getting yourself riled up, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not like stressful on my body like some things are,
So I look forward to learning more about your murder mystery obsession. I don't know. Is it an obsession?
It is an obsession. I do love it. Mm-hmm. And I have ever since I was a little kid. I think like the Boxcar Children were one of my favorites, and Nancy Drew. And so it's been something that I've been intrigued with, I would say, for my whole life.
Well, I think that that's a really good segue into sort of what we want to talk about today, because we're discussing how you can be exposed to some type of media, right, and not necessarily be experiencing that nervous system activation. Mm-hmm. And in this case, this is media that you're choosing. You're choosing to have this media interaction. It's an intentional engagement that you want to take place. Something that's been happening in the news over the last week, I mean, it's happening all the time, but I'm really aware of it right now because of how our work has shifted. And that's all of this really dysregulating news that's coming out of the celebrity sphere and pop culture in general, which is, okay, so I'm going to talk about September 11th, 2001 in that context of pop culture. And I know it might sound weird, like, how is that pop culture? Well, I just mean that it's in our popular culture, right? It's part of our pop culture lexicon. Like, that is an event that happened that everybody knows about. So while it's history, it's also part of our pop culture.
Yeah, it's been written into stories and it's talked about on a regular basis,
Absolutely. In addition, there have also been these news stories coming out about some really triggering situations, and then also some situations that people might be feeling kind of confused about why it might be bothering them. And so I want to talk a little bit about those stories, and I want to talk a little bit about why it's important to have tools and resources to process these news stories that we're inevitably going to be exposed to, and how we can help people with that.
Great.
Let's get into this. One of the big stories that has been happening over the last week and a half has been the Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis character reference letters for their friend who was convicted of sexual assault.
I think rape. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a really heavy subject. And so I know that there is a train of thought that there's really no point in having like trigger warnings or content warnings around things. And so I want to explore that a little bit. The idea behind that mindset is that we really just don't have any control over when we might come across something that triggers us or is activating to our nervous system or a wound. And those are actually really important for us to experience because it teaches us where we need to do some more healing. And it is not something that should be ignored or turned away from. Yes, you may not have the capacity to deal with it in the exact moment that something comes up, but that's why you need tools and resources to help you get through the present moment so that you can have time to process something when you do have the space for that and you have the capacity within inside your nervous system and your mind. And what I've seen happening with these news stories that I want to discuss, particularly this one with Ashton and Mila, is that it has been highly activating for a lot of people's nervous systems, and that has played out in the comments that we've seen. This is also something that we started to see with The Rock and Oprah Winfrey when they did their request for donations for the Maui fire. And that was people getting really activated as far as around their money beliefs, right? And capitalism and the struggles that everyday people are facing and how income inequality is affecting our culture and our communities, right? That's where that was coming from. This is coming from something that I see a lot of people feeling like it is a personal attack. Like I have seen people say that the Mila and Ashton situation is unconscionable. Like there's a whole other level of how people feel about this than the other news stories that are circulating right now. And I'm curious, when you started going and exploring some of these stories, what was sort of coming up for you?
When we see pushback against celebrities in the media in terms of something they've said or something they've done, a lot of it comes across as like tone deaf.
You mean as far as what the celebrity has said or done?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it was like hard for me to even watch the video of them apologizing or even the letter of their support because it's like, oh, it's embarrassing for them. I can't imagine why they wouldn't have anticipated the pushback.
I don't want to get into the details of what's happened, and I don't actually want to talk about the convicted.
Okay.
Because fuck him and fuck all that.
Yeah.
The only people who matter, in my opinion, are the people that he targeted and who have to recover from the violence he committed against them. And so what I'm more interested in sort of exploring in this is, what if I've seen it posed by some public relations experts that this thing with Ashton and Mila may have actually been an attempt to get publicity.
For them.
For them. Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
I mean,
that this is all actually just a publicity stunt, that they did anticipate it would cause pushback, and that's exactly why they did it. They knew these letters would be leaked. They knew that it would get their names in the paper. They knew that it would bring attention to them. And there were some other people from that 70s show, the people who played the parents of Eric. I don't know their names, whatever. Fuck them too.
Yeah.
The point is that, you know, they have other TV shows. Like there's another, that 70s show on Netflix or something, right? And so
Isn't
the idea
that
is
80s show or that 90s
I don't know
show
what
or
it's called
something? It's
now.
like
Yeah, I don't
their
know.
kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so here's the thing. I thought that 70s show was garbage anyway.
I never watched it.
If you like that, I'm sorry if you feel offended, but I just have never understood it. They were just TV shows that I never got. So I don't have any attachment to these people anyway, right? As far as, oh, I feel disappointed or whatever. Like, I don't really care. Like, they're showing who they are in these types of situations. And we can decide whether or not we want to support them. So now here's the question. Do you want to support someone who would use something like this as a publicity stunt? So that's one question.
Well, no, that's horrendous. That's like
And if that's not the case, if they truly do support this, their friend that they wrote character references for, do you want to support someone who supports a rapist? So these are questions that we have to ask. And so what's come up for a lot of people is they feel very disappointed, and they do feel almost like it's personal. Like, how could you support someone who's done something so atrocious? And that's a really good question for everybody to be asking about every single person who has any power, if I want to be honest.
Yeah.
And in this case, this situation has been made a little bit more disgusting by the fact that Ashton Kutcher owns some type of organization that is supposed to help people escape from sex trafficking or something like that. Some of the other things that have been coming up in the news cycle has been what's going on with Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner, from my understanding of this conversation, you know about a lot of this stuff from reading news articles or watching news. Is that correct?
Yeah, news articles mostly. But in terms of Sophie Turner, I actually do follow her, I think, on Instagram.
What I want to touch on is a little bit of a difference in the way that we've interacted with these news stories, because it seems like you're getting a lot of your information from the press, and I'm getting my information from comments that I see and how people are reacting in social media. So I'm seeing people flipping the fuck out in the comments on Oprah's videos. Oprah had to go and turn her comments off on Instagram because she was getting so much pushback. Wow. The Rock left his comments on, but either way, they both started getting a lot of that on their social media accounts. Obviously, we've seen these types of pushbacks on social media cause people to leave social media entirely. So I've seen people just flipping out about the Ashton and Mila thing. And then shortly thereafter, they started some promotion for an Airbnb that they're renting out.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the other reason that people think this is a little too much like a publicity stunt, perhaps. What I see around Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner is, again, I've heard publicity experts saying that they think this is a publicity stunt on the part of Joe Jonas, that he has done something and he's afraid it's going to come out. So he's trying to do a smear campaign. And who knows, right? Who knows about all of these things? Only time will tell. What I want to talk about is how much this is upsetting people, right? Because this, even if going back to the Ashton Kutcher thing, people are like, oh, the only reason that they wrote these character reference letters is because this person they wrote them for must have a secret about them that they know about. And then this whole thing started coming out about Ashton Kutcher and a woman that he was starting to date back in the early 2000s who was found murdered.
Oh my God, what?
On the night that he went to pick her up for the date. Apparently his fingerprints were found on the doorknob because she was laying dead inside, apparently, when he went to pick her up for the date.
My God.
So I don't remember hearing about this. This happened before 2007.
Is this real? Is this?
Yes, absolutely. It is 100%. Yes, it is 100% real.
Holy cow. Okay.
So what I'm talking about here is that this has activated people's nervous systems in a way that is sort of unprecedented, maybe in the last 10 to 15 years. it's become more normal for us to get worked up about this stuff. But like now we have such easy access to it. Before you would have to be like in a store reading one of those like gossip mags or something.
Yeah.
Right. Now this stuff is coming out almost in real time as it happens because of social media and the access that everybody has. So so people are like really, really activated around these stories, and you can see where the activation comes. Where it comes from regarding the Ashton Kutcher and Mila situation is a feeling of safety and betrayal, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty gross to think that people still don't understand that just because an abuser doesn't treat everybody that way doesn't mean they're not treating 1, 2, or 5, the people in their household, however many it might be that way, right? That's one thing that seems to be really activating a lot of people. The thing around Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner is I notice people are really upset with the way that he seems to be using misogyny as a way to...
like shaming her in terms of like not wanting to be a good mother because she wants to, she's 27 and she had her kids super young and hasn't really had like a young adult life, right? And now she's being shamed for wanting to go out and have fun because she's a mom.
And I don't even know if any of that's true. I personally didn't go out and do my fun party phase until I was in my 30s because of how everything played out in my life. So, and I don't have children, so I don't know what that's like. Regardless, I never hear this shit about men. Like, I'm sorry. Who was out there talking about fucking Steven Tyler partying too much when his daughter Liv Tyler was growing up? I don't remember that.
And he didn't even
narrative.
know he had a daughter. Like,
he's a piece of shit
she existed until
right. I mean, there's stuff in the media about him, and underage girls. So there's like, okay, let's get in. Like, here's the other thing that came out this last weekend was the Chris Evans wedding. You have half the people in the comments going, "Oh my God, this is fucking disgusting." She was 11 years old when the first Captain America movie came out. And then you have other people in the comment going, "Oh, I guess I missed my chance. I'll never get to marry Chris Evans." And I'm with the first camp. I'm like, gross. And again, it's just this idea that men are allowed to do things that women are not. And that if we say anything about it, then we're just bitter or we're shrews or we clearly aren't getting laid enough or we don't, we're somehow incomplete as people if we criticize this type of behavior and this double standard. But it's making people angry. And what I see in the comments on all of this is that people are pretty much siding with Sophie Turner, which is so
and she hasn't done anything. Like, she hasn't really come out and said anything. I think, Joe Jonas has like spoken publicly about this a little bit at his concerts. And she's just like posted that one, Instagram post that just says, okay, this is what we're doing. Yeah, she's not trying to smear him. She's not trying to, I think that's also the thing. It's like he's coming out as more publicly trying to say that she did something, that it's her that is not living up to these like expectations of motherhood and of being a wife. And
they're weaponizing it.
That's why exactly. That's why they're splitting up, is because it's all her, right?
He was in a boy band. And first of all, One Direction is way better.
He is in a boy band.
I guess he is. Yeah, okay, so
they're still performing.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know much about the Jonas Brothers. I was not a fan.
Me neither.
Again, One Direction, way better. And before that, it was like NSYNC, the Backstreet Boys, whatever. You know what I mean? I was not into the Jonas Brothers. But there were a lot of people who really, really were. And what I see overwhelmingly right now is that these women who would have been girls when the Jonas Brothers were popular are overwhelmingly supporting Sophie. I think that there is just like women being sick of this shit We just see these same narratives over and over and over and over and over again. And I think a lot of us have this hope maybe that after everything we went through over the last 3 years with the pandemic, that maybe things might change a little bit. And to just see this fucking shit happening again, it's like, are you fucking kidding me? No. We're sick of this shit, Oprah. We're sick of this shit, Ashton. Fuck you. Ashton is a much better name for him. Fuck you, Ashton. Fuck you, Mila. Fuck you, Joe Jonas. And you know what? I'm going to say it. Fuck Drew Barrymore at this point. Because what is happening right now with these talk shows going back on as the writers and actors are on strike and unable to work is pretty fucking gross. And the reports that Drew Barrymore's team were removing people from the audience if they were wearing...
Yeah, I saw that. Anything supporting of the strike,
So at this point, she can fuck off with the rest of them. And here's the thing. I'm obviously getting worked up talking about this. This is activating my nervous system to some level. I've always adored Drew Barrymore. Like, I've just found her to be such an inspiration for a woman working in entertainment, right? She kind of does it all. And she even does so much of like what we're doing, right? She has her magazine. She has a talk show. She has a platform. And this is how she's choosing to use her platform. It's so disappointing. It's so disappointing to all of us as we see rent rise and rise and rise and our wages are not. It's so disappointing to see when people are taking a stand against corporate greed, that the people that we admire decide to stand with them instead of standing with the rest of us. What the fuck, Drew? My understanding is that a lot of these daytime talk shows are going to be returning to air despite the strikes. I think the idea is that Drew Barrymore has had this very wholesome image. And to do something like this, it's sort of like Cinderella, literally, because she played Cinderella in Ever After. It's sort of like Cinderella spitting in your fucking face after she made it to the castle. You know what I mean? Like, I'm also disappointed. So these types of news stories activate our nervous system. Even a couple weeks ago, we were talking about this really disturbing Instagram that I saw with Goldie Hawn and this man. And the man was making really inappropriate comments to Goldie Hawn about her cleavage and about like being underneath her in the video, like sexual innuendos. And I was like, who the fuck is this guy to think that he can talk to this queen like this pop culture icon, this female comedian that has inspired so many other female comedians? Like, who does he think he fucking is, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember you said something so important. You were just like, well, it's important to like process these things before we react. And I was like, duh. Remember I told you, I was like, you're so brilliant. Because I get that when we're dealing with relationships, right?
Yeah.
In this case, I guess it's our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with media. And it's really important that we have tools available and resources available to us to deal with these activating situations. So you can show up in the comments with constructive feedback rather than a dysregulated, emotional, nervous system driven type of response that's just going to get comments turned off, right? Now where do you go? Now, where do you go to get that out of your body? If you haven't figured out how to process it and do it, there's nowhere else for you to go to get it out of your body. And even for those of us who don't necessarily like to sound off in the comments and instead like to get our popcorn out and read the comments, I'm one of those people because I find my validation in the comments. I'm like, okay, other people feel the same way I do about this. This is cool, right?
And you don't have to necessarily put your words out there. It's already being
There's nothing else I could really add. The thing with the Goldie Hawn situation, when I went through and read those comments, I didn't see anybody else saying what I had said. And so I was like, oh, I wonder if it's just maybe older people in this group, like people who might be in the boomer generation. And so they didn't see anything wrong with it.
Anything wrong. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. Oh, I was just thinking about what you were sharing is there is so much bad news out there right now, and there is so much stimulating and triggering news that does dysregulate us. And, you were asking me, why am I attracted to the types of media that I am attracted to? And why maybe have I chosen to listen to these books this week? And I think that might have something to do with it. It takes me out of that space, and it puts my mind in a more potentially distracted place where I'm not having to think about those big issues, when I'm not ready to.
Yeah. I have definitely needed to turn the noise down this week. I have
Yeah.
not been able to be online as much. I have not been interacting with TV shows or music with the volume on. Okay, so if I'm listening to music, I'm not interested in music with lyrics right now. I just want like instrumental.
And no Joe Jonas music.
Absolutely not. One Direction, yes. I have also needed to kind of take that break. And it's important for us to listen to those things, right? So there's a couple of fun things that I am going to be creating for us to share with our audience. And one of those things is going to be a media audit worksheet. In addition, I'm going to create a media journal. It will help you keep track of the media that you're being exposed to, how often you're being exposed to it, the emotional responses that you're having, and any thoughts, memories, or reflections that might be coming up for you as you're having these media experiences.
And that'll work really well hand in hand with the online course that I'm developing right now.
That makes perfect sense. I think that all of our stuff is going to be able to work together really well because of how it's all interconnected. So the media audit worksheet, I think that's also going to be a really important part of the courses, but also just for our audience. I think I'm going to put it up on our website as like a lead magnet freebie sort of thing. So that you can start to get a idea of exactly what's going on in your media world, and you can decide how you want to organize it instead of it just sort of flying at you. That's going to happen to us anyway, right? Life's going to happen to us anyway. Minx, you mentioned this thing about how there's so much bad news right now. My perspective on it is there's always a bad news cycle because there's always bad news going on. There's always good news going on. There's always a good news cycle as well. Now, we are going to seek out the types of things that we do, whether it's intentional or not. But there comes this whole other batch of media that can fly at us that we don't have any control over. And that's the things that we are going to get hit with, like breaking news, like September 11th. Do you know that the images of that day are seared into the mind of everybody over 35,
a certain age,
probably?
Yeah. I mean, I remember. Yeah.
Maybe even younger, because like I remember the Challenger explosion, right? And that happened while I was a school-aged person and I wasn't in front of the TV all day, those types of things.
Yeah.
So probably younger people. But at that point in our timeline, we had like 24-hour news cycles going on. So it was a constant bombardment of this tragedy and trauma that was happening. And we're still processing it. To this day, I anticipate September 11th coming up because I know that once again, all of those images are going to be everywhere. And when I say I anticipate it, I mean I anxiously anticipate it. My body knows it's fucking coming. My body knows that I am not going to have control over the images that I might see if I turn on any type of screen. And I also might not have control over what I might hear if I turn on any type of like spoken media.
Yeah.
I just feel really grateful that we are developing programs and techniques that we can share with people to help them deal with the unpleasant, unwanted, and unexpected media experiences that we all are going to have living in a modern world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot, even just having this conversation. Like, obviously, you've sighed. I think you've sighed like 3 times. That's like a way for our nervous system to try to release, right? And it's heavy. Like I said, I noticed my body getting worked up as we were talking about these things. And I just want other people who are experiencing these things, everybody who are commenting on these different types of news stories that we've been seeing recently. I just want you to know that I see you. I hear you. You're not alone. You're not weird or abnormal.
And you're allowed to be upset.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like, a lot of times, like I said, this stuff can be confusing for us. Like, why am I upset about fucking Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner? I don't fucking like, they're like, whatever.
Know these people. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't like that this narrative that he's putting out there is not just one that's happening between them and divorce court. He's contributing to this shitty weaponization.
Well, there's this narrative, and when you see it happening with the people that we kind of idolize, right, in our society, which are the celebrities and whatnot, then we see that as, oh, it's okay. If he's doing it, then that's okay, right? If this is how they're behaving, then that must be like okay for other people, and it's not okay, right? So that's what we are saying, right? We're saying, this is why it's upsetting, is because that's not okay.
And it has not been okay for a really long time. And finally, there are more numbers of people who are saying this is not okay. And they're using their voice to say this is not okay. This is also bringing up unhealed trauma in other people, though. Okay. So this is something that I really want people to understand. You're not just upset about what's happening with Joe Jonas because of your celebrity fascination. It's also because there's probably something inside of you that's unhealed around either this narrative that he's projecting or around a shitty relationship that you were in that's reminding you of this.
Well, and the collective unconscious, you know? I think there's a lot of this that's happening, the healing is happening for our global consciousness, you know?
Well, and that even brings us into the pain and things that we carry from our ancestors.
Exactly. And this will be covered in our in the first section of our online course. Actually, we're going to be talking about the collective unconscious, Carl Jung, and I'm really excited.
I'm excited too, because when we are able to share more of these tools with people, we're going to be able to see this empowerment happen around media, which is something that I feel so many of us have felt powerless again. Like, it's just there. Like, oh, we just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Well, now we can like really deal with it intentionally and in a fun way that we can use it to benefit ourselves.
Yeah.
And use it to learn about ourselves. I would say this stuff with Drew Barrymore is bringing up maybe unhealed trauma in people where they maybe feel unappreciated by their work life experiences. So maybe by their coworkers or bosses. And again, that's not to say that there isn't this bigger collective narrative for the culture and society, right? I'm talking about like more greed. On a personal level. Yeah. Right. I'm talking more on a personal level. And so even going to the Ashton and Mila thing, that's bringing up, I can think of more people than I have fingers and toes to count on who would identify with feeling absolutely betrayed for bringing up this horrible thing that this person has done. And then that person's friends just saying, oh, well, they weren't like that with me. That has harmed countless people.
And it's like, okay, so you know what it reminds me of? This is like the narrative that it feels like for me is like being in high school, being treated poorly by a man or a boy at that point, right? And whether that's like physical or just verbal abuse, but some sort of abuse, and then having like the popular kids stand up for them, right?
Yes.
And, then if you say anything against the popular kids, it's like, then you're just dissed, you're out, right? So.
Right. And so that could be where it starts for some people. And so that is something unhealed.
Yeah, for sure.
It could be something that's going on at home. Like maybe someone's being assaulted by somebody in their home and they're trying to tell their other family members about it and they're not being believed. Like this is fucking real shit in people. It is not just about these celebrities. It is not just about these fucking celebrities. They just have a platform where we see it play out, but it's a reflection of us and our own unhealed trauma. It's our own stuff that we need to be fucking working through. And that's why it's triggering us. That's why it's upsetting us. And that just gives us an opportunity to heal and love ourselves more. So fuck you, Ashton. Fuck you, Mila. Fuck you, Joe Jonas. Fuck you, Drew Barrymore. And fuck that guy who was, in my opinion, who was harassing Goldie Hawn. Fuck all of you. But also, thank you. Thank you for giving me this mirror that you're holding up and showing me more places that I get to love on myself and heal myself, because your shitty fucking behavior is a reflection of the things that I needed to heal and more people that I need to let go of in my life. So thank you. Thank you. Fucking thank you.
Beautifully said.
How are you going to use the things that we've talked about going into this next week, to be who you want to be, to reach your desires and goals with your media mindset?
You know, what I've discovered from this conversation is when something makes me uncomfortable or upset, I just try to like ignore it and not engage with why that could be the case. So I think that when something is triggering or upsetting, I'm going to examine that a little bit more in depth, right? And maybe, you know, I don't have to do that right away if it's not the time or place, but I can kind of be like, oh, wow, that was really upsetting. I wonder what I'm working through or what has happened that I need to work through to deal with that pain, right? How about you?
It has really just got me fired up to keep working on the behind the scenes types of things that we're working on for our offerings with our media mindset coaching, the media audit worksheet, all of that stuff. Because if just us having this conversation was able to shift you and your like how you're going to interact with these things with yourself, like that's fucking cool. That's the whole reason that I wanted to start recording these podcasts and having these conversations and doing these things. So I am thrilled by this. Like my eyes are the size of saucers right now because I'm just so excited. They're just like taking it all in. It's like, where do we go now? What can we start with now? Which is completely different than how I felt when we started recording this podcast episode, because I had a migraine when we started. Now my migraine medicine has kicked in, but also we have had this really invigorating conversation about something that I think is really important and
hard to talk about.
It is hard to talk about. I actually had a difficult time talking about this. It was hard for me.
Yeah, same.
It felt really uncomfortable and icky. And I felt like I wasn't allowed to be angry about the things that I'm angry about.
Yeah.
And that I'm supposed to like give some kind of compassion to these people who I think suck right now. And it's okay that I think they suck right now. I don't wish harm upon them.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jinx. Thanks for proposing this as a topic this week. And I'm excited to see what we come up with next.
I am too. And if you are listening to this on Spotify, remember you can interact with our poll and let us know how you're feeling this week and your media mindset, what's new for you. If you're listening anywhere else, please be sure to interact by subscribing, liking, sharing, and following us. We really, really love that support. And until next time, I just want to say, you know, this is the fucking revolution. This is the media revolution. Let's fucking go. Keep working on your self-concept and let's rebel the fuck on.
Yay.